The next thing we're going to look at is the data table. This is located below the graph on just about every report. The information you get to look at here will depend on which type of report and the metric group that you've selected in the Explorer tab controls located at the top of the screen. So let's scroll back down to the table. We talked about this a little bit before, but initially we have some options. At the top, we can choose our primary dimension. Since this is a location report, we can choose to sort by country, city, continent, etc. And even though the primary dimensions will change based on which report we're in, the format and concept around it is the same. So if we select city, the primary dimension changes, and now we're looking at the different cities. And then back to countries. And we're looking at sessions per country over the time period selected, which is 1 month. You may have noticed that on the left side of the country column are some checkboxes. What this allows us to do is change the graph so it plots the data of the country we've selected. Remember that the default graph view shows all sessions combined. So this is a way where we can change that to only show sessions for the countries we've selected. Let me show you. I'll select United States, Germany, and Canada, and then scroll to the top. And then I have to select plot rows, and here we are. Now the graph is showing us 4 different metrics. The sessions for the US, Germany, and Canada, and all the sessions combined. We can see which one is which by the color key above the graph. Then, just like before, if we hover over a day, we get a call-out box with the specific numbers for each plotted country per day. And then to undo this, we can click the box next to country and all will be deselected. And then we choose plot rows again. And this brings us back to the aggregated view. Next, if we want to add in a secondary dimension, we can do that by selecting the secondary dimension dropdown. And we have a ton of options, but Google is going to make us a recommendation based on what dimensions typically go together. In this case, Google is saying user dimensions are a good match. So let's choose one. I'll choose browser. And what we get is countries using a specific type of browser. So for instance, we see US users who use Chrome as the browser accounted for 196 sessions in the time period selected, which accounted for roughly 32% of the sessions. Firefox in the US is second with about 12% of the sessions. And we can see that Firefox is the most popular browser of users viewing our site in Germany. This just helps us understand how we might need to tailor our website to users in various locations. You can see that the primary viewers of our site are from the United States. I wonder if particular cities prefer different browsers. So let's take a look. So here we can see the first city is Freiburg, which is in Germany. Firefox is the most used there, which is the same as Germany as a whole. But then we have LA, Redmond, and Merrimack. And each of these has a different most popular browser. LA is Internet Explorer, Redmond is Chrome, and Merrimack is Firefox. So this is interesting. We need to make sure our site is looking very good on each one of those browsers so folks looking at them from those cities see our site at its best. We're going to discuss these specific reports later on in the course, so I'll give you additional context into how to best use them at a later point. Back to the navigation. If you'd like to remove a secondary dimension at any time, just click on the X next to the dimension. Another thing I should mention is the first column is sort of the primary column on the table, the one to the right of the dimensions. In this case, it's sessions, and right now we're sorting by the most sessions. We could also click on the column and switch it around so we're viewing ascending rather than descending. But this is also true with any of the columns. If we select it, we can sort by it. So if we want to show the cities with the highest bounce rate, we click on the bounce rate column, and we can sort it either ascending or descending. Then, if we scroll down to the bottom, we can choose to expand the number of rows we want to show in the bottom right corner. We could show up to 5,000 rows if we wanted to, but I'll just pass on that and keep it at 10 for now. Above the table towards the right-hand side is a search bar, which allows us to add in some basic filtering. For instance, we could look for a specific city, like New York. Just type it in and hit search. Now we'll only see the data associated with New York. If we want to bring in some more advanced search filters, we can select the advanced link next to the search field. And now we can add in various dimensions and metrics to filter out the data that appears on the table. We'll discuss how to use advanced filtering in a later video, so we won't get into that right now. I'll just cancel out of here. You may notice on the far right there are some graph icons, and these are our table display options. This changes the way the data is displayed on the table, which makes sense because, as we've seen, Google tends to give us a lot of options of how we go about viewing and consuming the data. First, I'll clear the filter so we can get a cleaner look at how the data views change. The second option on the list is the percentage graph, and I'll select it. And what loads is a pie graph that shows me the percentage of sessions in each location. And if we hover over the different pieces, we get a call-out box with the info. Also on the left, we have the cities and the order of sessions. And we can also change the data by using this drop-down here. And we can change the data and graph to depict things like new users, bounce rates, etc. The next option is the performance view. And this shows a horizontal bar chart, which shows the relative performance of the selected metric. If we use it, we can quickly see the performance of various cities compared to the total number of sessions over the selected time period. So the next is a comparison view. And this shows us a bar chart that plots the performance of the selected metrics relative to the site average. So everything to the right-hand side of the middle bar means that city, in terms of sessions, is performing above average. LA, for example, is performing 670% greater than average. If we scroll down, we can see that some of the cities perform below the average. And this is shown with a bar to the left of the midline and a negative percentage. So again, the middle line is the baseline. Everything to the right is performing above average, and to the left is performing below average. The last one is the pivot table. This is going to rearrange the information in the table for certain reports and is going to pivot that data on a second dimension. If we'd like, we can choose a pivot metric in this dropdown. So now we're looking at location pivoted across sessions and bounce rate. And this is an advanced report option that's a bit past the scope of this course, but I wanted to give you a brief overview of it just in case you'd like to look into it. So let's go back to our standard view. And the last thing I'd like to point out is every report comes with a refresh option on the bottom right of the report. And this is helpful for a variety of reasons, but say you've been in the report for a few hours and you're looking at data that includes data from today. If you refresh the report, then if new data has come into Google, you'll see that populate in the report. And you can always check when your last refresh was because Google tells us exactly when the report was generated right next to the refresh link. So that, in a nutshell, is how we navigate the report table. We'll be spending more time discussing how to customize the table as we move through the course. So if you don't quite see how everything fits together now, you should by the end of the course. We'll talk more about using primary and secondary dimensions to give us relevant data for our business needs.